So, notice anything different about me? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Thanksgiving weekend edition of Front Porch Brunch. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Welcome, as always. We're glad to have you here, especially on a day quite like this. And this is the very first Thanksgiving weekend edition of Front Porch Brunch that we've ever done, so you never quite know what's going to happen. Going to let everybody settle in. We're out on YouTube. We are out on Twitter. We are out on Rumble. And Gypsy, I did see your last-minute entry, and I have got it plugged in for when we get to HodgePodge Stew. So, yes, good morning to you, my dear. And good morning to you, Ms. Z Highness. We're glad to have you here. First in the room, very, very early, very, very prompt. We're very proud of you. Oh, goodness, gracious. We've got folks over on Rumble. We got folks over on Twitter. And we're going to try and have some fun on this weekend. It's going to be a very casual, laid-back sort of thing, although I've got a whole slew of topics to talk about. And I also recognize that for all of you college football oh, well, thank you very much. Yes, I was hoping you'd notice the improved sound of my microphone, but apparently the hat kind of takes precedence. So that's okay, I guess. Now, here's the kicker to it. Here's the kicker. I found this great, and I mean, and some of y'all saw it, this great red fedora that I had on yesterday for the Black Friday stream. And I've got to send the thing back. I wore it just for the live stream, but I've got to send it back. Now, don't get me wrong. It's going to be added to the repertoire, okay? Because I love that hat. That hat's fantastic. It's one size too big for my head. I know you can't believe that a head this big, could possibly have a hat that cannot fit it, but it is possible, and it is one size too big. But I'll be sending it back, getting a smaller size, same style, same manufacturer. I love the look of the hat, but I've got to send it back. So in the meanwhile, in the Christmas spirit, we're going to go ahead and wear this old Santa cap I managed to get my hands on. So we're glad to have everybody here. For those of you who have never stopped by before, my name is Brian Trippett. I am known in social media as the Front Porch Conservative. I am sometimes called the beau in the chapeau. I'm sometimes called the fine fella in the fedora, sometimes referred to as the wise guy in the wide brim, and on occasion I'm called the common man with common sense. And we gather on Saturday mornings to review items in the news because, let's be honest, you have had a very busy week. Aside from having to work however many days of the week you did, assuming you had to go in and you didn't take vacation, you've had to cook Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm sure we've all got stories from Thanksgiving. And, well, I promise you, Gypsy, that red fedora is coming back, my dear. Yes, I promise you, it is coming back. But yeah, you've all probably got stories from Thanksgiving. We shared a few of them yesterday on a live stream that I hosted. Had some folks stop by. My good buddy Ruben Christopher Haynes was there. We had Daniel from Dangerous Rhetoric. We had Tracy from Keto and Crime stop by. We had Peter Feliciano from Conservatish, and love every last one of them. They're great people. And if you're not subscribed to their channels, please do so. Like I said, Peter Feliciano can be found at Conservatish on YouTube. Keto and Crime, which is the one that Tracy Barkley hosts, is on YouTube. Dangerous Rhetoric is on YouTube and Rumble. So check all those people out. They're great people. Same thing with Ruben. He has his own YouTube channels. Check out Ruben Christopher Haynes. So we're letting everybody get settled in here for a minute, and we'll get this party started. So we, the American people, might have been taking a long weekend to enjoy a holiday that we really shouldn't take part in all year round, because the whole point of Thanksgiving is that we actually give thanks for all the blessings that we have. But there is one day that we celebrate, particularly remembering when the Pilgrims crossed the Atlantic Ocean, survived all the trials and travails that they did with the help of God and the providential blessing of introducing them to the American Indians. And together they celebrated a feast that was meant to give thanks for the survival of the voyagers who'd crossed the Atlantic and give thanks for the provisions that God had provided. And like I said, it's a holiday we could really celebrate every day of the week, but we set aside that one day of the year. And now it's taken on so much different cultural significance too. I mean, there's family gatherings, there's football, there's food, there's whatever. And I think it's one of my favorite holidays in the year. If for no other reason, my people and I get together to eat. So yeah, now yeah, Feliciano, he always adds a little spice every time he shows up. So you never know with him. But yeah, I thought it was a fun live stream as well. I really enjoyed it, very much did so. And I realize that today is going to be kind of a chill, laid back sort of a thing too, because you know people are traveling, people are going to football games, and if you are a college football fan, this is the Saturday, one of them you've been waiting for, because you've got the Michigan Ohio State game that kicks off at noon. You've got Auburn versus Alabama. The legendary Iron Bowl will kick off at some point today. All kinds of old in-state rivalries will be played today. I think Georgia probably plays Georgia Tech. Usually South Carolina takes on Clemson. So if you're a college football fan, this is one of those weekends you've been waiting for. I mean, I think Texas plays Texas A&M if they haven't already. Sometimes that game takes place the day after Thanksgiving. So, it's going to be if you're a college football fan, it's a great weekend. So you got that to look forward to. So this is going to be a really chilled, relaxed sort of front porch brunch. And thank you already. And I saw that every one of you so far have submitted tweets, Gitters, Gabs, Truth Socials promoting this live stream this morning. So bless your heart for that. I genuinely appreciate it. And, we'll get into some news, and there's quite a few things out there. I mean, you wouldn't think that during Thanksgiving week that would be the case. But, oh, no. The news takes no time off, and it does not recognize really holidays. Events are going to happen no matter what. And we've had quite a few of them over the past week. And I suppose we could go back to last weekend and I guess begin our discussions in the geopolitical. So much was made back in 2015 of the vote that Great Britain took on the question of what was commonly now called Brexit. And that vote was a shock heard around the world. And then in 2016, you had the election of Donald Trump to the presidency, beating Hillary Clinton, and that was another shock to the world. Well, these shocks come and go sometimes, but this past week, there has been quite a few shocks to the system, and we'll start in Argentina, where Javier Milei, this is from the BBC, Argentina's far right. I love how they do this. If it's somebody that doesn't agree with the narrative or the message or whatever, they're automatically far right. Far right outsider wins presidential election. That's from the BBC. And this election shocked a lot of people. I won't say I'm surprised by it, but I will say this much. Especially with a lot of Latin American countries, you have candidates like Milei who run and you think, oh, okay, they're nice guys, but they're never going to win. Well, I mean, for example, Bolsonaro in Brazil, nice guy, you didn't know if he was going to win or not. Well, Milei in Argentina won. Well, that sort of begs the question, who is he and what's he all about? So let's get to that real quick, if we may. And who is he? Well, basically gets down to this. Javier Gerardo Milei, born October 22nd, 1970, is an Argentinian politician, economist. Whoops, sorry about that. Get back to the top real fast. There we go. Is an Argentinian politician, economist, and author who is the president-elect of Argentina. Before entering politics, Milei gained notability as an economist, as the author of multiple books on economics and politics, and for his distinct political philosophy as a vocal proponent of the Austrian School of Economics. He critiqued the fiscal policies of various Argentine administrations and advocates for reduced government spending. I love this guy already. As a university professor, he taught courses in macroeconomics, economic growth, microeconomics, and mathematics for economists. Malai also authored numerous books and hosted radio programs. In 2021, he was elected to the Chamber of Deputies, which I guess is their equivalent of our House of Representatives, representing the city of Buenos Aires for La Libertad Avanza. As a national deputy, he limited his legislative activities to voting. Shouldn't you be doing anything else? Focusing instead on critiquing what he calls Argentina's political elite and propensity for high government spending. Malai has pledged not to raise taxes. Again, I like this guy. And has donated his national deputy salary through a monthly raffle. That's kind of cool. He defeated economic minister Sergio Massa in the second round of the 2023 presidential election on a platform that held the ideological dominance of Peronism responsible for the outgoing Argentine economic crisis. Okay. So that's who he is. So what does he want to do? Well, before I get to that, the Wikipedia page says he's known for his economic stance. I would argue he's probably now known as much for his hairstyle and dance moves. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, take a look at how he chose to celebrate winning on election night. This is downright comical. Truly it is. Give me 1 second here, folks. So I'm trying to get my, come along now, my other laptop to do what I want it to do. At moments like this, it's like, ugh. Okay, I think I got you. There we go. All right. Yeah, I think you're going to get a kick out of this. He's known for his hairstyle and dance moves. So you got to take a look at this. This is downright hysterical. Watch this. This is just priceless. I don't know about you, but that's my idea how you celebrate victory. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'll give you one more clip to show you what post-election was like in Argentina. This is pretty cool. I'm going to set this up. So you can see from this camera angle, somebody's looking outside of a bus or outside of some public transportation that they're riding in, and you see a black car right here. So when I start to play this, I think you're going to understand why I love this so much. Yeah, I mean, Gypsy's talking about how much she loves his energy. I agree with her, and I think you'll get an idea of why we feel this way. So watch this and tell me what you guys think. This is going to be really, really fun. So a little kid sees this car, and he realizes who's in the car. So watch this. So he gets out, shakes hands, waves, gets back in the car, gives the kid a high five. I'm sorry, that's just cool. That's well played, sir. Well played. I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. So that's his energy and his hairstyle. So what is it he wants to do? Well, by all accounts, he is very economically conservative. Oh, you're all right, darling. You're all right. We're glad you're here. Don't worry about it. It's all good. You know us. We're pretty casual on the front porch. It's all right. Glad you're here though. So what does Malai want to do? Well, he wants to eliminate the Central Bank of Argentina, much like our Federal Reserve here. He wants to eliminate the central bank there. He wants to privatize a significant amount of industry in Argentina that is currently run by the government. He wants to trade out their currency and have everything done in U.S. dollars. So there's a lot of positions there that, the people of Argentina are like, all right, we've got 148% inflation. I'm down with that. Let's go. Now, he was elected. Not a lot of members of his party were elected. So yeah, campaigning comes up against reality. So, let's take a look at some other items in the news about our friend Milei in Argentina. Now, he says absolutely under no circumstances, shutting down the central bank, it is non-negotiable. It's got to happen, okay? Which I think, okay, all right, if that's what he feels is best for his people, who am I to dictate the terms of how Argentina is governed, okay? A couple other headlines have come up in recent days. This is from Bloomberg. Market cheers as Milei drops dollarization for Maquis brass. Days after winning election, Milei leaves behind loyal advisors. National foreign bonds extend rallies and investors' eye policy. In the blink of an eye, Argentine-elect Javier Milei pivoted away from advisors advocating for his most dramatic campaign promises, choosing Wall Street veterans closer to former leader Mauricio Macri. Milei's boldest campaign proposals, dollarization and closing the central bank, appear at least on hold for now amid a staffing shakeup. Milei distanced himself from his dollarization guru, Emilio Ocampo, and on Friday, another hawkish advisor from the early days of the campaign, Carlos Rodriguez, announcing on X he was departing. Milei has reportedly said he'd name Ocampo to lead Argentina's central bank, though he reiterated Friday that closing the institution was non-negotiable. In their place, Milei's economic team is being led by Luis Caputo and Damian Radel, two Wall Street veterans who hold key posts during now soon to be former President Macri's presidency from 2015 to 2019. So you got some of that going on. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised by some of this. I mean, look, there's campaigning and then there's the reality of what you do after you win. And like I said, he didn't get a lot of the members of his party that he's a part of elected with him to Argentina's legislature. So there's going to be some give and take on this. But on balance, I think his election is a very good thing for the collective West, and especially for South America. Because, I mean, honestly, socialist policy has dominated South American politics for decades. It doesn't matter which country you're really talking about. And the fact that somebody, when I say somebody, a nation in South America, is willing to give free market capitalism a try, okay. That, I think, is worth taking a look at. The fact that the nation was willing to take the chance and try something different to alleviate their problems. But then again, when you've got almost 150% inflation, what do you expect? They got to do something. I think it bodes well. Let's see what happens down there. And he was asked to speak in 2019, but was never invited back. If he gave them a dose of what he gave Argentina in his speech, I'm not surprised they didn't invite him back to the WEF to speak again. Now, here's one that something that, I'm just old enough to remember the Falkland Islands wars in the 1980s when Argentina basically said, yeah, they belong to us, let's have them. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it may very well be a thing that Britain's in such economic turmoil right now. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, may say, take them, go ahead. But remains to be seen. So you had one election in Argentina, then you had another election in, of all places, the Netherlands. And this one may have been an even bigger shock to the system for people who support the idea of globalism in general than maybe what happened in Argentina. Take a look at this. Mega victory. Anti-mass migration populist Geert Wilders wins most seats in Dutch election exit polls show. Geert, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, Wilders and his Party for Freedom have swept to a stunning victory in Dutch elections, with exit polls predicting his populist anti-mass migration party will become the largest force in the House of Representatives in the Netherlands. Peter Omtzigt, whose new socialist contract party is projected to win 20 seats in the House, said that he is available to govern, suggesting that a potential coalition with election victor Geert Wilders. While Omtzigt did not mention Wilders' Party for Freedom by name, he referenced comments from his populace saying he's willing to jump over his shadow. Previously, Omtzigt had suggested he would not be willing to work with Wilders and said Wednesday evening that forming a government would not be easy, but it's the first indication that Wilders' strong success may force center-right parties to fall in line and support him as prime minister. Wilders, who is projected to have secured 35 seats, will need at least 41 from other parties to pass the 76-seat threshold needed for the majority. Let's see if we've got any further information here. Going a little further. While the victory for Wilders, who is a longtime critic of the European Union, mass migration, and the Islamization of the Netherlands, represents a stunning turnaround over a decade of globalist rule under Prime Minister Mark Rutte, it remains to be seen if other right-wing parties in the country will coalesce around Wilders and back him for the prime ministership. So, there you go. Absolutely amazing the things that are happening. Freedom is on the march in one form or another because of one issue or another. And it's interesting to me, particularly this election up in the Netherlands, that it's the issue of immigration. This is something where I think I have seen like one of the biggest disconnects between the governed and those who govern them. And here's what I'm getting at. You have the governed who is pushing mass migration, bringing in immigrants, almost ignoring borders altogether. And you've got the governed who are sitting there saying, hey, this is not a good idea. We've got, policy here we can't sustain. It's got all kinds of problems and all kinds of permutations. You guys need to back off of this. The people who govern will not listen to the governed, and on it goes until finally you get to an election, and then you've got a result like what happened in the Netherlands. This to me is kind of amazing. This is a truly amazing result. And, first you saw it in Italy earlier this year, although she's turned out to be a bit of a fizzle. Then you've got what happened in the Netherlands. Now you've got Slovakia. I haven't really looked into the details on that one, but I've heard Slovakia has followed suit much like the Netherlands. You've got Orban in Hungary. So in various places around the globe, you've got a distinct happening. And it seems to be, especially in Europe, centered around the question of immigration. So it's encouraging to watch because, people have a right to sovereignty, particularly for their nation. They have a right to be able to determine who comes into their borders and what that means for their country. And when that sovereignty is being trampled upon by the government, people are rising up and peacefully protesting in the best way they know how. They're going out and voting. So, I'm pretty cool with this, Now, it's the issue of immigration that kind of leads to something else that happened late this week in, of all places, Ireland. I'm going to pull this up. This is from the Irish Times. And, well, you hang on to that, Gypsy. We're going to get into that here just 1 second. And calling them a trash government after what they said in response to what happened, honey, you may be spot on with your description of these people because we'll get to it in a second. I'll just put that way. You've teed it up, so let's get there. This is from the Irish Times. Violent clashes with Gardaí, which is, I guess, their form of a police force, and vehicles set alight after children are injured in a knife attack. Garda commissioner says, quote, lunatic hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology behind violence which included multiple clashes with Garda. Article written by Connor Lally, Kitty Holland, Ellen O'Riordan. I love the Irish. Love those names. O'Riordan. Jack Power, Connor Gallagher, and Mark Hilliard. We read the summary of what happened. Friday's late live updates on the Dublin riots. There have been violent clashes between large groups of people and Gadar in Dublin this evening, with vehicles set on fire and shops looted. As Luas and some bus services have been suspended, there are reports of protesters firing flares and fireworks at Gadare, which again I'm assuming is their local police department, and at least one Gadar vehicle set on fire on Parnell Street, while a bus and a car were set on fire on the O'Connell Bridge at the end of O'Connell Street. The significant public disorder erupted following a stabbing earlier, which left 5 people hospitalized, including the perpetrator, on Thursday. Gadar Commissioner Drew Harris blamed the unrest on, quote, a lunatic hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology, while Minister for Justice Helen McEntee appealed for calm and said a thuggish and manipulative element was using the earlier incident to wreak havoc. She condemned the attacks on Gadare. Now, a 5-year-old girl is receiving emergency treatment at Temple Street Hospital after the stabbing incident. A boy, also aged 5, and a girl, aged 6, sustained less serious injuries and were brought to CHI Crumlin for treatment. The boy has since been discharged. A woman in her 30s was being treated for serious injuries at the Mater Hospital. The Irish Times understands she was an employee of the school or after-school care facility the children were attending. Gadar are trying to determine whether there is any relationship between the chief suspect and anyone outside the school or at the scene. The chief suspect is understood to be a naturalized Irish citizen who's lived here for 20 years. Passers-by intervened on the street shortly after the stabbing attack and subdued the suspect, took a knife from him, and threw it across the street into a grassy area close to the Garden of Remembrance. Gadar considered the main suspect, a man in his late 40s or 50s who has been taken for treatment for serious injuries, to be the chief suspect in the case. They are not looking for anyone else. The Gadar commissioner said all possible motivations are being considered. A number of passers-by intervened on the street shortly after the attack began and subdued the suspect, took a knife from him, and threw the knife across the street into a grassy area close to the Gardens of Remembrance. The incident took place outside Gez School, Scolast Meher, well, don't ask me to speak Gaelic, that's for sure, on Parnell Square East as children were coming out of the school, which caters to primary-age children. Oh, boy. Okay, let's get into this for a few minutes because this is something I want to talk about. And there's more to this. That just sort of sets the stage for what happened. We know that an individual who had immigrated to Ireland, apparently lived there for some 20 years, according to this report, he's a naturalized citizen, for some reason took a knife, went to a school, and started stabbing young children, and also injured 2 adults in the process. One child is in very serious condition, the other 2 lesser injuries, but still yet injured. And rioting broke out thereafter. Now, with regard to the rioting, I don't care what the issue is, and I don't care what someone feels their justification has become. You don't get to engage in looting. You don't get to engage in rioting. Frustrations are sometimes tense. I understand that. Frustrations boil over. We're all human beings. I get that. But no, I don't care what you think is the righteousness of your cause. You don't get the right to destroy and pillage and plunder in the name of somehow stating your position. Forget it. You want to peacefully protest something? That's absolutely your right. You want to do everything else short of breaking the law? Absolutely your right. You don't get to riot. That said, however, apparently there's a lot going on in Ireland in the way of frustration over Ireland's current immigration policies. and it's now reaching the point the Irish will not be pacified with Guinness. It's going to boil over, and it's starting to boil over in the streets. This is from the Twitter page of Andy Nago, who writes for the Post Millennial. A source who witnessed the rioting in Dublin, Ireland, sent this to me, and this is just it's a video clip. Sorry about that. Let me pull this back up here. He said many Irish people have had enough of violence, sex crimes, and housing issue caused by migrants, and the revelation that an immigrant suspect, allegedly, and he uses the word allegedly, was responsible for the mass stabbing attack on children in the city center was a breaking point. You can see some of this. Let me start it back over again. There are cars on fire back there. That is some pretty bad news. Now, what happened next in response to this by the government? Gypsy was referring to the government of Ireland as their as the trash government. Well, I can't really dispute that given how they reacted. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to justify rioting here. But if this kind of tension has been building between the Irish people and their government over the question of mass immigration, then I can sort of understand the sentiment behind the actions that were taken. I don't justify them, I don't support them, but I get it. And when you read this headline and the article contained therein, I think you're going to understand why the Irish people are feeling so frustrated. Irish establishment, this is headline from Breitbart. Irish establishment sneers at anti-immigrant riot as hate and lunatic. Poor Irish people staged a riot in central Dublin following the stabbing of 3 children by a man described as a homeless migrant. We don't totally know if that's true yet or not. I haven't seen any other reports to that effect. Yet the Irish establishment is portraying the Thursday night anti-migration riots as merely, quote, hate and lunatic and far right. The unprecedented riots come after years of growing community protest against the migration that is impoverishing Irish people with rising rent and flatlining wages. Oh, call me crazy, but does that sound like some other country we all know and just happen to live in? But I digress. Back to the article. So far, none of the established Irish political parties have sought to curb or reduce the impact of migration on Ireland's people. Quote, at the risk of sounding like a bleeding heart lefty, that riot, an expression of the disconnect that has been festering amongst disadvantaged young men for a long time, reported anti-establishment Irish news outlet Gript, which added the following, quote, but the media, like the government and the opposition, were eager to change the conversation, and Dublin city centre was being set on fire, gave them perfect cover to do so. So the usual nonsense about the, quote, far right started immediately, and the front pages are full of those photographs this morning. The government offered a very different view. Quote, this is not about immigration, Justice Minister Helen McEntee declared Thursday night. These are criminals and thugs who have come into our city center and have used a horrific attack on innocent children for their own gain. On Friday morning, Ireland's Migration Heritage pro-migration Prime Minister Leo Varadkar quickly described the rioters as hateful, suggesting he would clamp down on free speech and internet organized protests. This guy's a piece of work. A little further into the article, it's very obvious to anyone that our incitement to hatred legislation is not just up to date. Oh, really? Quote, it's not up to date for the social media age, and we need that legislation through, and we need to through within a matter of weeks, because it's not just the platforms who have responsibility here, and they do. There's also the individuals who post messages and images online to stir up hatred and violence, and we need to be able to use laws to go after them individually as well. Again, folks, does this sound familiar? Varadkar also portrayed the government as the victim of the drama. Oh, God, you've got to be kidding me. As a quote, as a country, we need to reclaim Ireland. We need to take it away from the cowards who hide behind masks and try to terrify us with their violence. Okay, let's get into this because I've read enough to be disgusted to want to comment. As I said, does some of this sound eerily familiar? Like it's something going on here in the United States? I mean, you've got the situation again of mass migration coming upon a country, in this case, Ireland. You have the citizens of that nation looking to their government saying, hey, guys, you need to cut this off or reduce it or slow it down because we're experiencing this problem and this problem and this problem because of it. And they keep speaking out about it. The government keeps ignoring them. They keep speaking out about it. The government keeps ignoring them. They go on the internet in Ireland. The government says they're engaging in hate speech. They keep going to the internet. The government says we got to start cracking down on this kind of stuff. An event like the riots in Dublin happens on Thursday night, and as opposed to the government looking at the situation and saying, hey, okay, maybe these folks have a point. We need to do something about this. Maybe it's time we revisit these immigration policies and we actually try to, listen to our citizens, more so than try to cater to people we're trying to bring in. Instead, the prime minister says these are individuals who are hateful. These individuals who are doing this are, trying to stir things up, yada, yada, yada. Sounds a lot like what's going on in the United States, although different circumstances. Now, like I said, I don't condone this rioting. It's wrong. I get it. They're frustrated. We Americans are frustrated. But we have no more right to start rioting than do the Irish, and vice versa. But the government but the government's saying they're calling them hateful, saying they're bigoted, saying they're xenophobic, simply because, now listen to the economic rationale. The people of Ireland are saying, look, you're bringing in all these migrants. It's reducing wages for the Irish worker, and it's causing the rents to rise for housing, and it's causing housing costs to go up. What's the government do? You're being bigoted. You're being xenophobic. How dare you? Look, I mean, I'm going to give the government of Ireland a piece of advice. Not that I think they're necessarily going to watch my live stream, or even if they do, listen to my piece of advice, but I think they should. I don't know if you guys just noticed, but there was an election in the Netherlands, and an anti-immigration party has been swept to power in their government. I don't know when your next national elections are, but if I were you guys that's currently in power right now, I'd pay attention to what happened in the Netherlands. I'd pay attention to what happened in Argentina. I'd pay attention to what happened in Slovakia, because the people in those nations are peacefully rising up through their vote, and they're putting people out like you that aren't listening to them. Like I said, I don't know when the next set of elections in Ireland is, but if I were you guys, I'd start getting nervous. But you've got the time to change policy here. I mean, look, I'm no expert on Irish politics, but it seems to me from the outside looking in, common sense sort of informs what's going on. If you guys have got a policy where you're letting in migrants by the thousands or maybe even the millions, who knows, and it's causing wages for the average Irish worker to go down and causes the cost of housing to go up, it seems to me you either need to reverse policy or at a minimum put a stop to it. Because, like I said, I mean, lay aside the electoral consequences. Let's just talk about the good of the Irish people here. They simply want to live in a country that they feel is safe, where their children go to a school and they don't have to worry about some lunatic stabbing them. They want their cities to be safe. They want their children to be safe. They want their wages to be good. They want to be able to provide for their families, and they want to be able to live in affordable housing. Gosh, what a horrible thing to ask of your government. Yet the government of Ireland is going in the 180 direction, like, no, we're going to keep bringing them in. Bring them on in. Come on, let's go. This is not good. And again, eerily similar to what's going on here in the United States. You can almost hear these same arguments playing out here in America. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why borders ought to be controlled. But this is one of them, and that is, look, I want to see everybody succeed. I want to see businesses succeed, but more importantly, I want to see the average American worker succeed. But when you're bringing in migrants, and again, I don't fault the migrants. Look, they're trying to economically better their situation too. I get it. But there comes a point of diminishing return for the average worker. When you start flooding the market with cheap labor, the wages start to go down. It's just economic reality. The Irish are trying in their way to tell their government, look, this is what you're doing to us. We've had enough. This little girl, these 3 kids get stabbed. You're not listening to us. And unfortunately, people go over the top. They don't protest peacefully. They start rioting. And it's reached that point, government of Ireland, you need to listen to your citizens. Otherwise, this kind of stuff, God forbid it happen, but this kind of stuff's going to continue. So, yeah, I mean, a very ominous warning for we here in America. And in a situation like this, I can always hear, oh, well, that'll never happen in America. Really? How do you know? How do you know it won't happen in America? And as I say, I don't want to see it happen. I'm not wishing it. I'm not trying to encourage it. But there's going to come a point, and God forbid it's anytime soon, but there's going to come a point when someone's going to get it in their head that peaceful protesting is not enough. They've got to do more to bring attention to an issue and hopefully affect change. They're ready to start doing it in Ireland. And that's pretty frightening. Pretty frightening indeed. And yeah, he's going to double down on this. I mean, like I say, he's got a chance to change and will not do it. So let's see what happens. Very frightening indeed. Very frightening. Oh, in that vein, talking about migration, did you guys catch the story about New York City? Check this out. Migrants get free turkeys for Thanksgiving ahead of low-income New Yorkers. Now, I'm not chuckling at the idea that one person versus another is getting a free turkey, or that migrants are somehow outdoing the poor in New York City. Okay, I bring up this story, I guess, to get into a discussion. Something's kind of been bugging me for a little while, and we'll get into the heart of the article here in a minute. There's a lot of reasons to oppose wide open, pedal to the metal, go from first to fifth gear mass immigration. Okay, there's a lot of reasons to do it, and you could probably state them with eloquence and economic assurity and everything else. But I guess there's one reason that kind of gets me going more than anything else, and again, I'm going to state this in just the only way I know how. How eloquent it is, or how whatever, can be determined by the listener. But it's a very simple question that I think citizens around the world, and not just the United States, because I mean, talking about Ireland, talking about the Netherlands, talking about Slovakia, other nations, everybody in one form or another is starting to ask the question that I'm about to ask. And it's this: should a nation not take care of its own citizens first before it starts worrying about everybody else in the world? Now, you could take that question out to the extreme and say, "Oh, what are you going to do? Give everybody a citizenship card and say, here, before you apply for services, you have to prove that you're a citizen of the United States." I mean, you get what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like the old, okay, prove to me you're a U.S. citizen. That's not necessarily what I'm getting at here. But doesn't a nation, and I'll ask it again, maybe in a slightly different way, does not a nation have the right, or maybe more to say the responsibility, to make sure that they're taking care of their own first before they start worrying about everybody else in the world? Or even slightly beyond that, do we not have a responsibility to put in place policies and laws that better the average citizen of the nation of which they are a member? Seems reasonable to me. I mean, why do you control your border? Well, one is national security. That's one reason. Another reason is so you can control the inflow of who's coming into your country. And why are you doing that? Well, part of it's economic reasons. Again, with a larger labor pool, that means cheaper and lower wages. What happens because of that? Well, the average American spending power isn't as strong as it once was. What's another reason why you control the border? Well, social services. I mean, if the government is going to be engaged in welfare of one form or another, and we can always debate whether that's good or bad or what it should look like or how it should be, that's not my point. But if the government's going to be involved in it, you don't want to tax those resources to the point you can't even provide the service. New York City is going through some of that right now. We will get into some stories about that. But shouldn't a nation try to make sure that the laws and policies it puts in place benefit its own citizens first before it starts worrying about everybody else? My answer to that's yes. And again, what that looks like on whatever particular permutation of that issue you want to talk about, fine, we can debate that till the cows come home. But I saw this headline and I'm like, yeah. Well, and there's a good question. This is what I'm talking about. Did the vets get any free turkeys? I don't know. I don't know. But this is what I'm saying. Should not our own laws and policies benefit our citizens first? Or, perfect example, our veterans. How many veterans are sleeping on the streets right now? Yeah, and unfortunately, Gypsy, you're right, they do. The government does despise our vets. How many veterans are sleeping on the streets these days? Homeless. People that have worn the country's uniform. People that have come back and because of various circumstances in their lives or things that have happened to them, they're now homeless and sleeping on the streets. And like I said, when I saw this headline, it just really got me thinking about that. And it just like, damn it, this is the kind of stuff that makes me crazy. You know, it really does. But let's get into this article just for the sake of fairness. Low income New Yorkers, and it's an article written by John Binder of Breitbart. Low income New Yorkers living in public housing say newly arrived immigrants have been first in line for free turkeys ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday as public resources are strained from illegal immigration. According to local reports and interviews, New Yorkers living in public housing are competing against tens of thousands of newly arrived immigrants to New York City when it comes to meals this Thanksgiving. Quote, "Why do they have to take the butt of everything?" said New Yorker Georgia Butler told Fox 5 New York in an interview This community is already suffering. The migrants were first in line for the turkeys this morning, Butler continued. They tell you to come here at 11 o'clock. You get there at 10. You get there like at 10:30 or 10:45, and they're already out of there. The line is from there to over here. Some pictures of what's going on. According to Fox 5 New York, New Yorkers living in public housing have seen more than 8,000 migrants move into their neighborhoods and having arrived at the United States-Mexico border and being released into the nation's interior. Already, low-income New Yorkers are dealing with strained resources. This week, city officials said they would offer a $15 gift card to those in public housing who've been forced to go without gas to cook meals for months. In addition, Mayor Eric Adams has announced billions in budget cuts for New Yorkers after the city spent nearly $1.5 billion in just the last year on newly arrived immigrants. By the end of next year, the city is projected to spend $12 billion on migrants. There are always unintended consequences to government decisions, good and bad. So let's just put that out there. But now New York City is living with them. And like I say, it just really breaks the heart. It really does. We the American people are being ignored to the benefit of immigrants, in some cases or most cases illegal, who are coming to our borders. Our government is letting them in. They're, by one form or another, traveling to cities like New York or Chicago or LA or others. Are, in the name of compassion, we're trying to help these people get an education, get housing, get everything else. And our citizens are being put in second place. Now, this is a small example. I mean, it's a very small example of what I'm talking about. But it just burns me that the people of the United States are becoming second-class citizens in their own country. Our government cares more about illegal immigrants than it does its own citizens. And again, going back to Ireland, I'm not justifying anything that happened over there in the riots, so don't misunderstand me. That's not my point. But my point is, they're rioting in part, or perhaps because of, the Irish government's policy toward immigration. People in New York City who are poor can't get food. Why? Because the migrants are beating them to it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm for compassion for anybody, okay? I want to see everybody helped if at all possible. But again, I go back to my central question. Shouldn't a government look out for its own citizens first before it starts worrying about everybody else? Eric Adams, whether you like him, don't like him politically, whatever, that's fine. I get it. Eric Adams, as the mayor of New York City, is trying to figure out how to deal with an immigration crisis that he didn't start, by the way. He's just having to deal with it, like every other mayor around the country. Brandon Johnson in Chicago, others. Okay. So, again, my question is, should not the federal government do something about immigration such that cities like New York City don't have to deal with this? I mean, again, is there an easy answer to all this? Not really. We had the border under control by 2019 and 2020, and then the current administration came in, undid most, if not every policy the previous administration put in, and now we're dealing with this. And our government is trying to tell us that they've got immigration under control, that the border is secure. You know what this is? That's the universal sign language symbol for bullshit. Yeah, bullshit, our border's under control. Whatever. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit down on the mouth about this, but this just what did people like Eric Adams and Brandon Johnson and other mayors around the country, be they of cities large or small, who support, Joe Biden and his administration, what did you think was going to happen when Joe Biden opened up the spigot on immigration across the border on the South? Did you not think that sooner or later this is going to wind up inside your cities? Were you that naive to think, hey, if we support our boy at the top of the ticket, man, we're going to have a good time here. We'll get everything taken care of. Yeah, ask New York City how that's working out for them. Ask New York City how many migrants they're taking in every month. Ask them how much it's costing them. And that's just New York City. We're not even talking about the whole country yet. We're just focusing on New York City right now for purposes of this discussion. And this makes sense to anybody? Not me. Call me crazy, but I'd rather go back to the guy who put out mean tweets, but actually kept our border under control, such that our cities didn't have to worry about where they were going to get the money to take care of illegal immigrants from that are being flooded and bussed and flown into their cities. Call me crazy if you wish, but kind of makes sense to me. Control of the border is not just necessarily about national security. It's also about economic security. And I have a question for folks in New York City. Bless your hearts. Do y'all feel economically secure right now with what's going on? Are you feeling better about your wages? Are you feeling better about city services, etc., and so on? Okay. Up in Connecticut, I saw that one, and we will get to it. We will get to that. Yeah. So just kind of amazing. One comment. That was a good question. So you got the turkeys. How'd they cook them? Yeah. So that's some of what's going on. And I can't believe it, but an hour's already flown by. Holy cow. My name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch. And we've got folks on YouTube this morning popping in. We got Gypsy. We got Up in Connecticut. Larry has stopped by. Happy Thanksgiving, Larry. We got folks over on Rumble watching. Thank you very much for stopping in. Love all my Rumble people. And we're just going over some items in the news. And some of it just makes you shake your head, and some of it makes you go, maybe there's some hope. And we're just sitting around talking about it. And good morning, my dear. How are you? Glad you were able to stop in. Good to see you. Good to see everybody. I'm glad you were able to stop in on Thanksgiving. I mean, I know you got family in and that sort of thing. And, bless your hearts, you guys are cool. Thanks for stopping by as always. You're fantastic. Been talking about issues all the way around. By the way, speaking of things going on the border, did you guys hear about what happened up in Canada? This one gave everybody a pretty good scare. And fortunately, yeah, you hold on to that one. You hold on to that one. We're going to get to this. I did. Yeah. See, again, this is proof. This is proof. This is proof of why my audience is the best thing going on the internet. The Fedora Nation is nothing short of amazing. So yes, we're gonna get into Miss Cardi B. Chatizens. I like that. I like that. Chatizens. That's a cool term. Chatizens of the Fedora Nation. All right. Chattisons of the Fedora Nation. Okay. We'll get into that. Y'all hear what happened up in Canada? Holy cow. This gave everybody a really good scare. This is from Newsmax. Fiery crash kills 2 at Niagara Falls Rainbow Border Bridge. No sign of terrorism. And I'm not going to lie. When I first heard this, that was my first reaction. I thought, oh, God, it's a terrorist attack. And I get it. I mean, if y'all had that reaction too, given everything that's happened over the past number of years, really going on for decades now, you understand why people feel that way. Fortunately, we got lucky. By all accounts, from everything I'm hearing, this was not terrorist related. And we'll get into it, get a little further into this article. This is primarily from the Associated Press. Vehicle speeding toward a U.S.-Canada bridge from the American side crashed and exploded at a checkpoint in Niagara Falls on Wednesday, killing 2 people and prompting the closing of multiple border crossings for hours. Authorities were not sure what spurred the wreck, but they said there were no signs it was a terrorist attack. Much remained unclear about the incident at the Rainbow Bridge, which stirred concerns on both sides of the border as the U.S. headed into Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Both U.S. President Joe Biden and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were briefed soon afterwards, and Trudeau excused himself from the question period in the House of Commons to get further information, saying officials were, quote, taking this extraordinarily seriously. After a few hours, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Western New York's U.S. Attorney Trini Ross both sought to ease fears while cautioning that the investigation was in its early stages. Quote, based on what we know at this moment, Hochul said at a news conference, there is no sign of terrorist activity in this crash. So, oh yeah, the video on this is nothing short of amazing, which I've got a clip, and I'll play it for you guys. But Robert brings up flying car. Folks, he's not kidding with this. So let me get this pulled up. Well, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I can see that. It's early. That's what we know, or that's what we're being told. I'm not saying anybody's wrong here. I'm just comments are comments. I'll put them up here, but let's see how this plays out. So, yeah, I've got a video clip to show you what this looks like, or at least what's the clip that's being put out there. So let me get this thing pulled up real fast for everybody. But yeah, this is kind of amazing. So, okay. This is the checkpoint. Look at this red circle, and there's a white car right there. I'm going to play this. Here we go.
Authorities say there's no evidence that the deadly...
Did you guys see that? Let me back that up. That thing hit a curb and absolutely took off. I'll play it again.
Authorities say there's no evidence that the deadly...
One more time.
Authorities say there's no evidence that the deadly wreck on Wednesday at a Niagara Falls border crossing...
Boom.
Wednesday at a Niagara Falls border crossing was an...
That's crazy. Just crazy. A little more information that's been found out since then, and these come from the UK Daily Mail. Yeah, and you know what? Well, before I do that, you know what, Robert? I'm going to pull that up. That is absolutely the truth. There is so much propaganda that's supposedly news that you're really not sure what is the truth and what's not. And it is sad. I absolutely agree with that completely. You know, it's reached the point that there's a collective level of cynicism, regardless of whether you're conservative, liberal, libertarian, whatever you may be ideologically. You hear news anymore and your first reaction is, Yeah, right. And it's really kind of scary. It really is. But let me pull up a couple of articles here from the UK Daily Mail. Bentley driver may have suffered, quote, medical emergency before crashing $300,000 supercar into Canadian border on ill-fated trip to see a Kiss concert with his wife. Authorities struggle to identify the couple incinerated remains after fireballs sparked terror fears. 56-year-old businessman is believed to have been behind the horrific car crash. He is said to have been driving a $300,000 Bentley. Jeez, that's the cost of a good house. Lost control. Sources suggested he may have suffered from a medical emergency at the wheel. Authorities were struggling to identify the remains due to their incinerator wreck. And one more headline here. Friends mourn generous and kind couple killed in Canadian border car crash when their $300,000 Bentley supercar exploded into a giant fireball as it flew through the air, sparking terror fears. This article is by Paul Farrell for the Daily Mail. Friends of the New York couple who were killed when their $300,000 Bentley became a giant fireball during a horrific crash on Thanksgiving Eve are being mourned by friends as generous, kind, and always willing to help. The unnamed couple died instantly after their car was sent hurtling 40 feet through the air after hitting the median at high speed before disintegrating upon impact. The crash led to rumors of terrorist involvement, which has been ruled out by New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Meanwhile, the couple's friends, who were gathered for an event at the Niagara Sailing Club on Thursday, mourned the pair. Quote, people were just incredibly shocked. It's just not only a younger couple like that, but so ingrained and influential in the community, club treasurer Scott Henderson said. A neighbor told the station that he returned home from work on Wednesday and saw the cars parked outside the victim's home. He assumed they were having a party. I thought, oh, well, it's a Christmas or Thanksgiving early, and that's really nice. About an hour later, he heard the news and was like, oh, my God, said Chuck Meyer. It really shook, shock and devastation. It's gut-wrenching, really. They were so loved. They were so generous and kind and always willing to help, his wife, Mary, said. Yeah, really kind of scary. Like I say, if reports are to be believed, we dodged a bullet. It wasn't terrorist related. If reports are to be believed, and again, all facts are yet to come out. So let's see what happens. But really kind of scary. Really scary indeed. So that's the most of the news items that I've got. And we've got quite a bit of stuff lined up for HodgePodge Stew. Now, for those of you who are watching the show or will watch this show later, HodgePodge Stew is that section of Front Porch Brunch where there are news items that we talk about that aren't necessarily above the fold, so to speak, but they are of interest and we kind of comment on them, laugh about them, make fun of them or the subjects of the news article enclosed, and we just basically kind of, toy around with it. So before we do all that, I said it's Thanksgiving weekend, and obviously you all are fully aware of that fact, but just a quick reminder, there are people out there watching over us, not our government, who kind of keep us safe from the harms outside our borders. So always make it a point to say a prayer for them, as I know you guys do. But while we're here, able to gather with our families, eat lots of food, watch some football, et cetera, and so on, they're taking the incoming on our behalf. And here's one story to kind of remind you just how dangerous a place the world can be and what they do to protect us. U.S. bases and troops attacked in Iraq and Syria on Thanksgiving Day. Gee, what a way for our service people to have to spend the holiday. U.S. bases and troops in Iraq and Syria were attacked with mortars and armed drones on Thanksgiving Day, according to several reports. According to Sky News Arabia, U.S. and international forces were attacked 4 times in Iraq and Syria, but there were no casualties or damage to infrastructure. In Iraq, several suicide drones were launched at the Ain al-Assad air base west of Baghdad, as well as one at the Harir base near Erbil Airport in northern Iraq, where U.S. troops were stationed, according to the report. A little bit further into the article, a group calling itself Islamic Resistance in Iraq claimed responsibility for the attacks in Iraq, according to Sky Arabia News. There were also a claim that militia forces stormed the base using rocket-propelled grenades and small arms. So, yeah. Next time you see a serviceman or woman, if the opportunity allows it, give them a thank you, because these folks are definitely watching our back. Okay, going back to the Canada story. Ooh, that's a good question. Did not know that. I'll check out Laurel. Gonna check that out. But thanks for bringing that to my attention. Okay. All right. This next one is compliments of Gypsy. She shot it to me just before we went on, and has to do with new footage that's been discovered in all the 40,000 hours of J6. So, you're targeted. What? Okay, I'm obviously missing something here, but okay. I don't know, is it my ads or somebody else? Red-blooded American. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I had a moment of confusion. But yeah, Gypsy sent me this, and there's some new footage from January 6th. You know, those crazy kids, and you know, that went up to the Capitol, inside the Capitol. They're so dangerous. Yeah. Don't worry, dear. We love you. Go do what you got to do. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks for continuing to listen. But yeah, here's one for you. These crazy, dangerous people that, you know, went up into the Capitol. Yeah, here's one for you. Shows a MAGA grandmother down the stairs. Watch this.
I'm ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of you. Ashamed of you.
Back that up.
Of you.
Look at that.
Ashamed of you.
Shoved her right down the stairs. Yeah. Those dangerous people walking around the Capitol carrying flags. Wow. Just kind of amazing. Just kind of amazing. Oh boy. So that one, thank you, Gypsy, for dropping that one in. I didn't see that one. So during this session of HodgePodge Stew, let's circle back to New York City, because oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, all right. Oh, the ads. Duh. Sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, let's circle back around to New York City. Gypsy had mentioned in chat that Cardi B is currently not happy with the mayor of New York City. Well, when I show you a set of stories, I think you're going to understand why. Let's start with this one. This is from the New York Post. New York City to, quote, roll over, accept Mayor Eric Adams' budget cuts, schools and more, say sources. Article written by Carl Campanile. The city council is expected to roll over and allow most, if not all, the controversial budget cuts by Mayor Eric Adams, sources predicted Sunday. The newly unveiled 2024 financial plan from City Hall would shrink the police department and slash funding to schools, cultural institutions, and libraries, supposedly due to the increasing cost of housing migrants. Former Brooklyn Councilman Sal Albacini blasted proposed cuts and implored the city to get a spine. Quote, "They're going to roll over. They're going to opt to do nothing and blame the mayor for these cuts. I'm urging them to get a spine. That's a lot to ask for from city council." The former mayoral candidate suggested that council members may be protecting legislative grants member items that they steer to pet programs in their districts. Quote, "Unbelievably, the New York City Council in June touted and spent a ton of money on, quote, member items without considering that the fiscal house of New York City was on very shaky ground," Albanese said on Twitter. Of course, irresponsible politics is more important than fiscal prudence. While decrying the cuts, council leaders have not indicated how they will proceed with the political hot potato. The council and Adams approved a $107 billion city budget with much fanfare on June 30th. But in September, Adams ordered city agencies to prepare to slash spending with cuts of 5% and possibly a total of 15% by the spring, blaming escalating migrant costs. In addition, the city needs to compensate for the loss of federal pandemic funds and the cost of generous labor contracts and pay hikes for the workforce. Quote, "All of us are concerned about the impact that the reductions will have on the ability to provide essential services from public safety to clean streets to public schools." Council Majority Leader Keith Powers, Democrat of Manhattan. By the way, going back to the police department, did you know that if Eric Adams' proposal goes through, the city police force is going to be capped at about 29,000 police officers in New York City? Let me say that again. 29,000 police officers in New York City, and out of a city of what, 6, 7, 8 million people, with more people coming in all the time vis-a-vis migration and immigration? Yeah, and that's a real good question, Robert. Where was all that fiscal conservatism before they got started? Yep, right there. Right there. Good question. It's come back to bite them in the rear end. But as mentioned, this is not making a lot of people happy. One of them is the rapper Cardi B, and she took to some social media platform to let her thoughts about this be known. And I'm going to play you a little bit of this. And if you have sensitive ears, I apologize in advance because she does use some words that are inappropriate. But I'm going to play this, a little snip. It's 5 minutes long. I'm going to play part of it. And I've got some questions to ask when she gets done. So let me get this set up. And here's the clip. And I want you guys to listen to this.
I need y'all to spread this video. And if something happens to me, it's because I'm speaking truth. So God forbid something happens to me or my family or some shit, is because the niggas is after me because...
Apologize for the use of that word. I forgot I started that one too early. Apologies.
I'm speaking the truth. And here's the truth, right? In New York, there is a $120 million budget cut. There's a $120 million budget cut in New York that is going to affect schools, public libraries, and the police department. Y'all know I don't give a fuck about the cops, but like, it is what it is. There's going to be an $120 million budget cut with schools, with the libraries, and the cops, and the police department, and a $5 million budget cut in sanitation. Of a budget cut in sanitation, bitch, we're going to be drowning with rats. We're going to be drowning in fucking rats. So we are going to be having a budget cut on these shits. Mind you, and this is why I said this is what I'm telling y'all, I'm not this year. Don't fucking ask me. I don't give a fuck the resume that they send. I don't give a fuck. I'm not endorsing no fucking presidents no more. Because how is there a $100 million budget cut in New York City for fucking schools, library, police safety, and sanitation. Yeah, Joe Biden's talking about, like, yeah, we could fund 2 wars. We could fund 2 wars. Motherfuckers talking about we don't got it, but we got it. Like, we're the greatest nation. No, the fuck we're not. We're going through some shit right now. Like, say it. We really going through, we really are fucked right now. $120 million. Like, where these kids are gonna go? Like, I'm lucky. I'm blessed. I'm whatever the fuck. But like, what's gonna happen to my nieces? What's gonna happen to my nephews? What's gonna happen to my cousins, my aunts, my friends? That's living in the hood. Fuck the hood. Like, my shit. Like, I don't give a fuck if I live in Jersey, bitch. I'm from the Bronx. I don't want to see my shit affected. The Bronx, Brooklyn, it's gonna affect the whole New York. 120 million budget cut on schools, libraries, police department, and sanitation. Bitch, New York is already fucking super dirty.
Okay. As I say, words that are not appropriate. And the comments are coming in fast and furious. Yeah, they're already drowning in rats in one form or another. Hello, Flagrant. Good to have you here, brother. Good to have you here. Wow. I mean, now I have some questions. Okay. Laying aside colorful metaphors that she uses frequently in that little snippet of a 2-minute video, my first observation is, boy, Cardi B got based real quick. I was like, welcome to the party, sister. Everybody's been saying this. Everybody's been saying this sort of thing now for weeks and months and years. Oh, I love this. I gotta put this up here. Flagrant, point taken. You ain't wrong, dude. But I mean, all right. My joking aside, okay? All right? And regardless of what you think of Cardi B, and we can all sit here and talk about her past stuff she's done, things she's been involved in, things she said, whatever. I get it. I have a question for, liberals and progressives who might happen to see this live stream and hear these comments coming from Cardi B. Keep in mind, we're talking Cardi B here. We ain't talking about, Tucker Carlson. We're not talking about Curtis Sliwa, who was a candidate for mayor in New York City. We're not talking about name the prominent conservative pundit, whatever. We're not talking about Steve Bannon. We're not talking about anybody else. We're talking about Cardi B. She gets it. She gets it. She's like, I'm not endorsing any presidents this year. How could Joe Biden sit there and say, yeah, we can pay for it. We can pay for 2 wars. We can do all this stuff. We're the greatest nation. No, we're going through some shit. Now, I'm laughing doing a poor man's Cardi B impersonation here, but you get my point. That's not me saying that. That's not any other YouTuber or Rumbler or any. That's not Russell Brand. That's not, whoever. That's coming from Cardi B. Now, granted, she came to the party a little bit late, but she's had her eyes opened. Now, do I think she's going to go all right-wing, conservative pundit, whatever, when she's on stage at a concert? No. But her point's valid. We're cutting $120 million out of New York City's budget. Why? Illegal immigration. Why is New York City dealing with illegal immigration? Because the federal government's got the southern border wide open. They're flowing across, and they're being shipped to New York City and Chicago and LA and Philadelphia and Baltimore and St. Louis and every other major metropolitan city in the country. And now the citizens of those cities are dealing with it, who otherwise would have supported Joe Biden in the last election because bad man orange. And now they're realizing that the consequences of that action, what it means for them and their communities. And Cardi B, like I said, regardless of what you think of her, okay, Cardi B sitting there going, bitch, we can't deal with this shit. You know, we're going to be floating in rats. You know, well, honey, you got it. You got it. Share it. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Again, point taken. But I mean, look, like I said, you can sit there and say, oh, it's Cardi B. I don't like, okay, well, fine. No, all right. Like her, don't like her. But it's her point for you liberals and progressives that are watching this, you know you do. You just don't want to admit it. Is her point wrong? Is her point wrong? She's upset with Mayor Adams, but she gets right back to the origins of this. She's like, I ain't endorsing any president this year. Joe Biden sit there saying we can fight wars in two different countries and pay for it all, and we're great and we're fantastic. No, we're not. We're going through some shit. Cardi B recognizes we're going through some shit. So I saw that video and I'm like, holy cow. Absolutely amazing. But the troubles in New York City do not just stop at the budget for budgeting purposes with the citizens, and doesn't stop with Cardi B posting a 5-minute video somewhere. I don't know if you all remember it or not. I don't know if y'all saw that or not, or remember it or not, but I guess it was maybe a week or two ago. Mayor Adams from New York City was on his way down to Washington, D.C. to meet with Joe Biden and other big city mayors, Chicago, among them, Philadelphia, etc. But about a day or two before he left, he made some comments, and he, appropriately so, said, look, we can't keep on doing this. My city needs a $5 billion bailout. Now, you can sit there and argue about whether or not they should or should not have a $5 billion bailout. That's not the issue. The issue becomes, he's out standing up to Joe Biden saying, hey, we need to close the border. We got to do something here. This is crazy. Well, about the time he's on his way down to Washington, D.C., his chief fundraiser gets a visit from the FBI. And now it gets even worse for the poor mayor. Well, yeah, that's true. There's a few blind squirrels these days coming out of the woodwork. But on top of that, he had this trouble break loose on him. This is from the Twitter page of Simon Atiba. It's no longer the FBI. Now it's sexual assault going back to 1993. New York City Mayor Eric Adams now faces accusations of sexual assault and battery in a legal filing yesterday under New York State Adults Survivors Act. Note, the unnamed woman alleges Adams sexually assaulted her in 1993 when they both worked for the city, with Adams being a New York City police officer at the time. Also note, the FBI recently went after Adams over alleged foreign funds for his campaign 2 years ago. Further note, many have said that the Biden administration is coming after him after he criticized them over the migrant crisis. That's Simon's take on it. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'll just say this. I find the timing of these things to be awfully coincidental. The mayor comes out, stands up against, says, this migration is killing New York City financially. It's doing us all kinds of harm. We've got to do something about it. as he's on an airplane down to Washington, D.C. His chief fundraiser's house is raided. He's accused of taking foreign money, and now you have a sexual assault charge or accusation from supposedly 30 years ago. 30 years ago. Kind of funny to me. Call me crazy if you wish, but, all of a sudden he speaks out against the administration's migration policy, and the roof comes down on the guy. Just saying. Read into that what you will. So, but by the way, one last thing about New York City. There is good news for the citizens of Gotham, that if things with Eric Adams don't go well, there's somebody waiting in the wings who wants the job, apparently. I don't know if you've seen this piece of news, but somebody is ready to come riding in on a white horse and save the citizens of New York City. Check this out. Report: New York's Andrew Cuomo considering a run for mayor. Oh my God. This is too good. Article by Joshua Kaplan. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is said to be discussing a possible campaign for mayor of New York City, according to a report Tuesday. Politico reported Cuomo, who resigned more than 2 years ago amid allegations of sexual harassment and claims his administration covered up a number of COVID-19 deaths tied to nursing homes, has begun in recent days to gauge the viability of a potential mayoral bid, according to 8 people who have talked to him or his inner circle. Quote, "I got the impression that he is ready," said the Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr., who chatted with Cuomo last week, told Politico. "No one knows what is going to happen in the city. My opinion is if he runs, he will win," Diaz said. "Many are in need of a leader. Even though Governor Cuomo and I have our differences, we've had many fights in the past, and besides the differences, I think he was a great governor." Oh, boy. Just when you thought it couldn't get any more interesting and or worse in the Big Apple, along comes that piece of news. So oh God, just amazing. And you know what? The sad part about it, honestly, the sad part about it, I think he'd win. I think this Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr. is absolutely right. If Andrew Cuomo declared his candidacy to run for mayor in New York City, I think he'd win. Or if he did, he'd win, but it'd be a nail biter. But he'd still win, because I don't. In spite of everything that's happening in New York City right now, and beside laying aside all the negative consequences of all the bad policy that's going on up there, I don't think New Yorkers have yet come to the realization of, what these politicians that they support, what they're causing to happen to them, the citizen. Oh, that's kind of serious. Okay. We'll get to that. I've got something lined up for that too. So, yeah. I remember his dad, Mario Cuomo, prominent politician of the Democratic Party in the 1980s, governor of New York, I think for like 3 terms. I'm telling you, there's something about the Cuomo family. They are good at selling freshly shined turds. They have a real knack for it. Just saying. So it's about 12:05, and we are here for Front Porch Brunch. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative, and we got a really fun group gathered together up in Connecticut. Flagrant, Triggers, Gypsy, Robert, a few Z Highness, handful of others. We got folks watching over on Rumble. We got folks watching over on Twitter. Glad everybody's here, and thank you for putting all the shout outs to everybody and letting everybody know that we're on right now. Couple of more stories, and one of them is related to what we just saw from up in Connecticut, that there is a deal to release hostages. Darling, I'm planning next Saturday for sure, and you never quite know. But yeah, next Saturday for sure, 10:30 a.m. If anything else comes up, I will let you know. I will tweet it straight at you. But for right now, I'm planning on next Saturday. And is this going to be the outfit till the end of the year? Well, this in some combination. I'm doing my best to be festive. I am doing my best to be festive and to enjoy the season. As I say, this is not the hat that I intended. There is a fedora that's coming. It's already here. It's just one size too big for my head, so it's going to go back starting on Monday. But yes, this outfit in some form or another will be the outfit of record. So, but yeah, it's about 5 minutes after 12. We're going to be here for just a little bit longer, and I'm going to get into this story. There was a ceasefire negotiated in exchange for hostages. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. So there's a ceasefire negotiated for the release of hostages, and the Israelis have agreed to a 4-day ceasefire in exchange for certain hostages being released. And there's, as with always with these things, and particularly as it relates to the Middle East, there's always various reports, who's doing what, who's not doing what. If you don't do this, the deal's off, yada, yada. But let's go with what we've got right now, okay? And this I count as good news. On day one of Gaza's ceasefire, Hamas and Israel carry out first swap of exchange and prisoners. And this is from the Associated Press. Hamas on Friday released 24 hostages it held captive in Gaza for weeks, and Israel freed 39 Palestinians from prison in the first stage of a swap under a 4-day ceasefire that offered a glimmer of relief for both sides. Israel, wrenched by the abduction of nearly 240 people in Hamas's October 7th attack that triggered the war, cheered as 13 Israeli women and children emerged free from Gaza. Most were in their 70s or 80s. Jesus. And the youngest was a 2-year-old. My God. Also released were 10 people from Thailand and 1 from the Philippines. In Gaza, the truce's start Friday morning brought the first quiet for 2.3 million Palestinians reeling and desperate from relentless Israeli bombardment that has killed thousands, driven 3/4 of the population from their homes, and leveled residential areas. Rocket fire from Gaza militants into Israel went silent as well. Like I said, regardless of which side of this whole thing you're on, that's some good news. That is some very good news. And, you know, it's my prayer that all the hostages, regardless, are let go very soon. Because, like I said, I'm 52, and I'm just old enough to remember the Iranian hostage crisis. And for those of you who don't remember that, 52 of our citizens were held for over 400 days at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. And it was a crisis that I won't say totally paralyzed the United States, but it took us a long time to work that thing out. And there's people being held from different nations all around the world, including Americans. And our president Joe Biden, who we affectionately refer to here on the front porch as Soft Serve, President Soft Serve had some comments to make upon the release of the hostages. And one of them, if he's actually thinking about this, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, to be perfectly honest. And I'm going to pull up a tweet because he's asked a question. And like I said, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. So let me get this pulled up real fast. And I'll play it for you guys. Okay. Take a listen to this and tell me what you guys think.
I've encouraged the Prime Minister to focus on trying to reduce the number of casualties while he is attempting to eliminate Hamas, which is the legitimate objective he has. That's a difficult task, and I don't know how long it will take. My expectation and hope is that as we move forward, the rest of the Arab world and the region is also putting pressure on all sides to slow this down, to bring this to an end as quickly as we can.
Mr. President, what are the chances of this truce to be extended by a few days or more?
I think the chances are real.
Mr. President, there are members of your party who would like to see conditions placed on aid to Israel. What is your view on that? They would like to see, the deduction of the bombing.
Well, I think that's a worthwhile thought, but I don't think if I started off with that, we'd ever gotten to where we are today. We have to take this a piece at a time.
Okay, I don't know if you heard what the reporter asked, but it's basically this. Should we, as a nation, should we make funding of Israel conditional upon, they're engaging in more conciliatory or more of a ceasefire posture? Okay. And Biden basically says, well, it's kind of a worthwhile thought, but I don't think that if we had started off there, we would have gotten where we are today. I got problems with this. Now let me explain this. Let me explain where I'm coming from, okay? My problem with it basically is you can't have it both ways, Joe. I mean, pick one side or the other and live with the decision. Either you're going to go in, full both boots first and support Israel and do what you're going to do to support Israel, or you're not going to do it. Don't sit here and straddle the fence. But then again, politically speaking, he's got to straddle the fence because he realizes that the Democratic Party is being torn in two over this issue. Okay? You've got a particular wing of the Democratic Party. You can make an argument it's a generational wing of the Democratic Party that's going to support Israel in this. And frankly, I think they should. Regardless of what you think of Israel or the U.S.'s relationship to Israel or whether we should be supporting them monetarily or whatever, they are an ally. And an ally was attacked unprovoked on the 7th of October with hundreds of their citizens outright killed and many of them taken captive. Then you've got another wing of the Democratic Party, a different generation of the Democratic Party, that wants nothing to do with Israel. They think they're the bane of evil in the world. They're pro-Palestinian all the way. And you've got Joe Biden trying to, rattle both of those tensions or straddle both of those tensions. And look, if you're going to support Israel, look, President Biden, if you're going to support Israel. But don't do it halfway. Either you go all the way in or you don't. And I think Robert brings up a really good point here. Shades of how Carter handled that. You got it. I cannot disagree with that assessment at all. Oh, we're going to get to that next, Gypsy. We're getting to that next. Now, lest you think that that little piece of wisdom about Joe Biden saying maybe the aid to Israel ought to be conditional, he dropped one more pearl in that press conference up in wherever he's vacationing at. Yeah, he dropped one more pearl that's just absolutely mind-blowing. So hang on. We're going to play this. So, folks, if you thought that first piece of wisdom was great, check this out.
President, you said you were hoping to get cooperation from Arab leaders. What are you hearing from them when you talk to them? What would you like to see them do?
So the question is, all right, you're talking to Arab leaders. You're trying to get cooperation from them. What do you want to see them do? Now, here is President Soft Serve's response.
I'm hearing a lot, but I'm not going to speak to it right now. There's an overwhelming desire on the part of the region to, let me back up. I cannot prove what I'm about to say.
Okay, here it comes.
But I believe one of the reasons why Hamas struck when they did was they knew that I was working very closely with the Saudis and others in the region to bring peace to the region by having recognition of Israel and Israel's right to exist.
I got a quick question. Anybody remember any news reports about this? About the Biden administration engaging with all these folks in the Middle East to try and to get that done, the recognition of Israel as a nation? Just asking.
You may recall when we did the G20 about a little while ago, I was able to get a resolution, a statement passed through there saying we're going to build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through the Middle East into Saudi Arabia, Israel, et cetera, and all the way up to Europe. Not the railroad, but it would be an underground pipeline and then railroad. The whole idea is there's overwhelming interest, and I think most Arab nations know it, in coordinating with one another to change the dynamic in their region for longer term peace. And that is what I'm going to continue to work on. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it.
Oh my, the unmitigated gall of this man. Yeah, that's probably it. A lot of it. I mean, the unmitigated gall of this man. Well, there's a real interest to try and change the dynamic of what's going on in the region, and I got them to support the idea of an underground pipeline and a railroad that would go all the way from, Saudi Arabia all the way into Israel and then up into Europe. I don't know if you want to remember or if you want to admit it, but your predecessor had deals on, not just on the table, but deals that were done and signed in September and October of 2020 between Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, and various other nations of the Middle East and Israel to start working toward bringing peace. And it was based on security agreements and economic agreements. Strange. It almost sounds like you're trying to copy from Donald Trump. Shocking, I know that it sounds like that, but the average person, if they didn't know him better, might accuse you of copying from someone else. Can't possibly imagine why we'd all think that. Well, and Robert, you bring up a really good point. I asked the question, does anybody remember reading about this in the media? All this stuff about I was on the verge of getting these, Arab nations to recognize Israel's sovereignty and the right to exist. And I said, does anybody remember reading this in the papers anywhere? Rob brings a point. If he did have anything planned, it would have been blasted all over. So yeah, exactly. Unbe-frickin-leavable. The gall of this man knows absolutely no boundaries, and most certainly it knows no limits. It just boggles the mind. I mean, this guy has been plagiarizing off people for more years than I've been alive. And he just keeps right on doing it, and nobody calls his hand on it. Well, unless, of course, it's me and you and everybody else among the beast. It just, God bless the absence of intellectual curiosity Well, no, it's not really the absence of intellectual curiosity. It's called, journalistic integrity. They have none. Somebody should have called his hand on it right then and there. Excuse me, didn't your predecessor, Donald Trump, get these deals done? That sort of thing, the very thing you're talking about. Why are you trying to copy off of him? I'd have loved to see just one reporter, just one, ask him that question. That'd have been great. Oh, boy. Just boggles the mind. It really does. One last thing, and we'll wrap it up. Because like I say, it's a great weekend for college football, and y'all got family in and everything else. And like I said, y'all have been very, very cool hanging out with me this Saturday morning. Every last one of you, Gypsy, Robert, Leanne, up in Connecticut, Flagrant, everybody. Y'all been very cool. And those of you on Rumble too, God bless you guys. And yeah, and small time chime in, War Eagle. That's all right. I'll forgive you. I'll pray for you. How dare you root against my Crimson Tide? Yeah, I still love you. That's all right. Even though you got crappy taste in football teams, that's okay. I still love you. One last thing, and this one falls under the item of hypocrisy on display. And Z Highness, yes, you too, dear. One last thing under the item of hypocrisy on display. Did y'all hear about this? So the other day on Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough said the following. In a second term, Trump will imprison, he will execute whoever he is allowed to imprison. He will execute, drive them from the country. Just look at his past. It's not really hard to read. Now, I don't think Joe Biden's executed anyone. And pretty sure he hasn't driven anybody out of the country yet. But I'm very sure Joe Biden has imprisoned a lot of people who he disagrees with politically or who engaged in actions related to January 6th. I know that's true. But lest you think this was the only one, the one that cracks me up the most is this one. So Representative Dan Golden of New York, who we here refer to affectionately as Goldilocks, goes on with Jen Psaki, who we also have a nickname for. Her name is Peppermint Patty. So Goldilocks goes on, yeah. Owen Schroyer ring a bell as far as people imprisoned? Yeah. So Goldilocks goes on with Peppermint Patty on her show, and they get into a discussion of former President Trump because they can't think about anything else to talk about. And Dan Golden says the following. So check this out. This is going to blow your ever-loving mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, he says I would be well received because he knows that the people who were there are his supporters who he riled up and incited to invade and riot at the Capitol and try to disrupt the proper counting of the Electoral College votes. So every time he talks, he's putting himself into a bigger criminal hole. But that's not his objective. His objective is purely political at this point. Politics don't work in a courtroom, as I think he's finding out in the New York Attorney General's case in New York, a civil case, and that's going to continue in his criminal trials. But his rhetoric is really getting dangerous, more and more dangerous. And we saw what happened on January 6th when he uses inflammatory rhetoric now, and his recent Truth Social post is incredibly, incredibly scary for anyone that might be trying to work in government. And it is just unquestionable at this point that man cannot see public office again. He is not only unfit, he is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
I want to also.
Did you guys catch that? He has to be eliminated. Now, I will give Dan Goldman credit. About a day or so later, he issued an apology via Twitter saying that he used a poor choice of words. Here's my response to it. Okay, Goldman or any other Democrat out there, or anybody like Joe Scarborough in the media, I don't ever want to hear you guys ever again saying that, inflammatory language, insightful language, or whatever is coming from people on the right. You guys are just as guilty of it. I will make an argument you are more guilty of it. It is people like you and language that you've used that got Steve Scalise shot. Okay? It is people like you and the language that you use that is causing division in the country. So no, I don't ever want to hear that crap coming from you again. Oh, these people are using insightful language. Listen to this awful rhetoric. You are as guilty or more guilty of it. So don't ever try to lecture me or anybody else ever again about what kind of language and rhetoric we ought to be using in political discourse. You are disqualified from ever giving an opinion or rendering a judgment about anyone ever again. Shut your pie hole. Okay, I've got it out of my system. I feel better now. Okay, it's about 12:30 and on Saturday, and I hope you guys continue to have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. And I want to thank you guys, in all seriousness, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and everybody else. You guys are awesome. You're the best audience on the internet. You're fantastic. And, in this season of giving thanks, I give thanks for you. Even Larry the Liberal, believe it or not. But yeah, you guys are absolutely fantastic. As always, we're going to be back next week with more videos. Continue to spread the word about this channel. We are a going little concern. We want to be a going big concern. And yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. She never corrected him. Not once. So yeah, we'll be back next week with videos. For everybody that's been watching this morning on YouTube, on Twitter, on Rumble, bless you, thank you. For everybody that sent out tweets advertising the live stream, bless you, thank you. You guys continue to have a great weekend with your families. Enjoy your football games this afternoon. And we'll be back with videos. We'll be back next Saturday morning for sure. Always keep your eyes open because you never know when I'm going to drop an interview with somebody during the week. Anyway, Merry Christmas to all of you. And remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall. It's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money.